I scored a 99 percentile score on the GMAT with 6 weeks of self-study using only GMAT official practice materials for my preparation. That helped me get an MBA from Columbia Business School and find a job in the technology industry in Silicon Valley. However, that was several years back. The GMAT exam format and scoring methodology have undergone significant changes in 2024. I'm trying to score a 99 percentile score on the GMAT once again. The question is, can I achieve my goal with confidence and certainty? Today is day 31 of my GMAT prep. On day 30, I kickstarted my preparation for the reading comprehension question type from the verbal section of the GMAT. Today, I intend to continue that. In addition, I will also pick up one practice set each from the quant section and the data insight section of the GMAT respectively. I want to seed a question in your brain before I get into my reading comprehension practice set. The question is simple. In what sequence should you process the different pieces of information that a reading comprehension question presents to you? Let me clarify that question a little bit so you can think about it while I get to my practice set. Generally, every reading comprehension question on the GMAT will consist of a passage accompanied by 3 to 4 questions. Every question obviously consists of a question itself along with 5 options against it. At any given point of time, you will be looking at one question relating to the passage. You will not know what additional questions relating to the passage will be presented to you as you go to the next screen. So really, at any given point in time, all you have is the passage, one question, and the 5 options corresponding to that question. Given that general layout, you can go through things in the following different ways. You can read the passage first, then the question, then the answer options. You can read the question, the answer options, and the passage, or finally you can read the question, the passage, and the answer options. Those are really the only 3 sequences that would make sense. So as I go through my practice set, I want you to think about this question for a few seconds. Which of these sequences do you think is most likely to be effective when attacking reading comprehension questions on the GMAT? While you're doing that, let me get into the practice set. Alright, so that was about 1 hour in total. 40 minutes of that were spent in answering about 22 reading comprehension questions. I was able to answer all of them correctly. I spent the remaining 20 minutes just looking at the solutions provided in the online question bank and just confirming that the line of reasoning I had used to answer each question was consistent with the line of reasoning provided in the solutions. One thing to note here is that I not only look at the line of reasoning corresponding to the answer that I chose, but also look at the line of reasoning corresponding to other options which I was not super confident about rejecting or eliminating. To give you an example here, if you look at my notes from question number 15 of the practice set, I was split between option A and option D. I went with option D just because I was more confident with that. However, I was not very confident in eliminating option A on this question. And that is why it was important for me to look at the line of reasoning to understand what is it that I was missing while evaluating that particular option. Let me now get into some quick pieces of advice for you. There are 2 things that you should notice from my notes that you're seeing on my whiteboard here. First, the way in which I write the different answer options. If you have practiced any reading comprehension questions or even critical reasoning questions, you know that one of the approaches that you will have to rely on pretty consistently is elimination. In order to eliminate answers properly, you will need to track which of the options you are eliminating because you may not be 100% confident about eliminating one option as you're looking at it. As you go through options A through E, there will be some options which you are able to reject confidently, and there will be some where you're on the fence about whether or not it is the right answer. If you get into the habit of writing A, B, C, D, E for every single question on the verbal section of the GMAT, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time. One way in which I save time, as you can see from my notes, is by creating a matrix of sorts. So all I do is list different answer options and list different question numbers, and then I track my elimination using this matrix. Some minor efficiencies you can add in is not listing options B and D, for example. I'm just saving a few seconds here and there by not doing that, so that is not very critical depending on whether or not you're able to stay clear on what your matrix actually is. If you feel that writing B and D there makes it easier for you to track what you're doing, please feel free to go ahead and do that. Finally, the other thing you want to notice is the usage of symbols in my notes. In my case, you will often see me use symbols which look like this. Each of these symbols mean different things to me. A tick mark indicates I have strong confidence in an option. A cross indicates I have strong confidence that I can reject or eliminate an option. A tilde indicates that I am on the fence about the option. And a circled negative mark indicates that I have less than 50% confidence that that is the right option. You can make up whatever symbols you like, but make sure to use them consistently so that you don't get thrown off by your own notes and your own symbols in the middle of the GMAT exam. Now let me answer the question that I had asked you to think about at the start of this video. Straight answer: In my case, I prefer to read the question followed by the passage followed by the answer options. Obviously, this only applies when a reading comprehension question shows up on your screen for the first time. As you move into the second question, you would have already read the passage, and as a result, it makes sense to continue using that same sequence going forward. The reason why I choose to read the question before reading the passage is psychological. By reading the question first, I am orienting my brain to seek an answer to the question. You can understand the psychology behind this by conducting thought experiments in real life. The nature of the human brain is such that when you pose a question to it, it, it tends to go out and seek answers. This is not a psychology lesson, so without going too deep into it, what I'm using is a principle called priming. To give you a real life example, think of a time when you had to find a niche service provider near you. For example, maybe you were looking for a tailor or a bike repair shop, and you might have passed by it hundreds of times without ever paying it any attention. But then comes a day when you start thinking about, oh, I need to find a bike shop or a tailor, and then you realize that your mind automatically filters out the noise and focuses your attention to things that are relevant to that question. Really, what I'm trying to do is use the exact same principle. By beginning with a question, I am orienting my mind to find detail that will help me answer that question. Obviously, in order to use this well, you need to be comfortable with not knowing the facts of the passage before you are reading the question itself. Because reading comprehension questions often refer to terminology from the passage, reading the question upfront may not make much sense to you. All you need to do is be comfortable understanding the question partially. After you are done reading the passage, you can revisit the question and read it again to confirm your understanding, and then go through the process of eliminating answer options. The last thing I want to talk about on reading comprehension is probably the most counterintuitive principle that I'm willing to stand behind. The principle is simple: have fun. This principle also connects in some ways to the two principles I had spoken about in my last video. For example, let's say you are reading a reading comprehension passage about Phalaenopsis orchids. That's a very complicated word, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, so I will just put it on the screen. As I mentioned in the last video, one way in which you can make your mental processing more efficient on reading comprehension questions is to simplify such words. But you can take it even further by turning that into another word which triggers an emotional response inside you. Ideally, that emotional response would be laughter and fun. The reason I recommend that is because most of the content that you will see on the verbal section of the GMAT is very dry. Injecting some humor, laughter and fun into the situation will make it easier to focus your attention. That is also the reason why you might occasionally see me smiling as I'm solving through verbal questions. To be clear, the emotion that you're triggering does not even have to be positive. All it needs to be is strong. So if you're not making it something funny, make it disgusting. At the end of the day, you don't have to tell me what you're doing in your head. One of the other benefits of doing this is that it might help you visualize a passage that is otherwise entirely abstract in nature. So talking about Phalaenopsis orchids, I could transform it into a word like pocha, which means a floor mop in Hindi. Obviously, the transformed word has nothing to do with the flowers that we are talking about, but take into consideration the fact that the passage is describing how scientists are going around conducting experiments on these orchids. And the visualization in my head is of scientists smelling floor mops all over the place. You may not share my sense of humor, and that is perfectly okay. The objective here is for you to find a way to transform the content in a way that makes you feel more engaged with it. Alright, so that is all for the reading comprehension practice set today. One thing I want to call out is that starting from today, I will be picking up quant and data insights practice sets at random times of the day, so I may not have time to share commentary like this for those practice sets. I will still be recording them on camera, so you will see them towards the end of my daily videos like this one. I will continue to share limited commentary on those sections, but if you're looking for deeper content on the quant or data insight sections, I recommend watching some of the previous videos in this series. If you have been following me, you know that I've already exhausted all the quant questions from the GMAT official guide. So starting today, I will be using questions from the quantitative review to practice for the quant section. Let's get started. Alright, so it's been about 70 minutes at this point. I just finished going through a quant practice set. Because I have already covered aspects of my quant preparation in several of the preceding videos in this series, I will not dive too deep into what happened on this practice set today. At a very high level, I took 55 minutes to answer 21 questions on this practice set, of which I was able to answer 19 questions correctly. If you have been following me, you know that that is a drop in my accuracy. On performance analysis, I just noticed that one of my biggest struggles here was not using space properly. I think part of this is just because I'm a little out of practice. You know that I've been focusing heavily on the data insight section. So all I'm going to do to correct this is to ensure that I'm picking up at least one quant practice set every day going forward. I will not dive any deeper into this practice set just in the interest of time. When I reattempted the two questions which I had answered incorrectly the first time around, I was able to answer them both right. So clearly my problem with this practice set was not that I did not know how to solve these problems. The problem was that I was not in the right mental state and I was not applying the accuracy and velocity principles properly. I think that's just because of a lack of practice. All I need to do is ensure that I'm practicing quant problems every day from now till the day I give the final GMAT. Alright, so that was another 90 minutes. During that time frame, I spent 57 minutes solving through a data sufficiency practice set. I answered 26 questions in total, of which I answered 23 correctly, meaning I answered 3 of them incorrectly. The questions I answered wrong were 255, 279, and 295. All the question numbers I'm mentioning correspond to question numbers from the data sufficiency section of the GMAT official guide 2023-24. Just so you have a reference point, I will list all the question numbers that were part of this practice set in the video description. Just as I did with the quant section, I will avoid going into too much detail on this practice set as well because I've covered a lot of details in the previous videos. At a high level, the reason I answered all of these 3 questions incorrectly was either because I gave into some GMAT trap or because I was trying to speed through the question and hence missed some minor detail. I was able to answer all the 3 questions correctly on my second attempt. One of the minor improvements I made through this practice set is altering or tweaking the sequence of steps I follow in solving data sufficiency questions. I will cover the exact sequence of steps I follow in solving data sufficiency questions in a different video and link that up here. Across all the 3 questions, the cause of error was either because I gave into some GMAT trap or because I was trying to speed through the question and as a result missed some minor detail or made an error while taking down notes. Those are all issues that you will face as you try to accelerate your performance on any given question type. The key is to be able to get to a point where you are able to identify and correct those errors at high speed so that on the GMAT you don't end up making similar mistakes. Alright, so that is all for today. If you have any questions for me, click on the Ask Me Anything link in the video description below. You can also hit like, subscribe and bell and put some orchid smileys in the comments while you're at it. I wish you the best for your GMAT prep and I will see you in the next video.